Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Friendly Friday Read Aloud brought to you by the Jackson Hole Children's Museum. My name is KJ Morris, and I am a board member at the museum. And I was going to read you this book, but then while I was practicing, I realized that someone was actually better at reading the book than me, and that would be Craig Morris, another board member, and together we are also your co-founders. Here is The Big Orange Splot. The Big Orange Splot by Daniel Manus Pinkwater.
Mr. Plumbeam lived on a street where all the houses were the same. He liked it that way, and so did everybody else on Mr. Plumbeam Street. This is a neat street, they would say. And then one day, a seagull flew over Mr. Plumbeam's house. He was carrying a bright orange can of paint. No one knows why. And he dropped the can, no one knows why, right over Mr. Plumbeam's house. It made a big orange splot on Mr. Plumbeam's house. Ooh, too bad, everybody said. Mr. Plumbeam will have to paint his house again. I suppose I will, said Mr. Plumbeam. But he didn't paint his house right away. He looked at the big orange spot for a long time, and then he went about his business. The neighbors got tired of seeing the big orange spot. Someone said, Mr. Plumbeam, we wish you would get around to painting your house. Okay, said Mr. Plumbeam. He got some blue paint, some white paint, and that night he got busy. He painted at night because it was cooler. When the paint was gone, the roof was blue, the walls were white, and the big orange blot was still there. Then he got some more paint. He got some red paint, some yellow paint, green paint, and purple paint. And in the morning, the other people on the street came out of their houses. Their houses were all the same, but Mr. Plumbeam's house was like a rainbow. It was like a jungle. It was like an explosion. There was the big orange spot, and there were little orange spots. There were stripes, there were pictures of elephants and lions and pretty girls and steam shovels. The people said Plumbeam has popped his cork, flipped his wig, blown his stack, and dropped his stopper. They went away muttering. That day, Mr. Plumbeam bought a carpenter's tool. That night, he built a tower on top of his roof, and he painted a clock on the tower. The next day, the people said, Plumbeam has gushed his mush, lost his marbles, and slipped his hawser. They decided they would pretend not to notice. That very night, Mr. Plumbeam got his truck full of green things. He planted palm trees, baobabs, thorn bushes, onions, and frangipani. And in the morning, he bought a hammock and an alligator. Why would you buy an alligator? When the other people came out of their houses, they saw Mr. Plumbeam swinging in his hammock between the two palm trees. They saw an alligator lying in the grass. Mr. Plumbeam was drinking lemonade. Plumbeam has gone too far. This used to be a neat street. Plumbeam, what have you done to your house? The people shouted. My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams, Mr. Plumbeam said. The people went away. They asked the man who lived next door to Mr. Plumbeam to go and have a talk with him. Tell him that we all liked it before he changed his house. Tell him that This house has to be the same as ours so we can have a neat street. The man went to see Mr. Plumbeam that evening, and they sat under the palm trees, drinking lemonade and talking all night long. Look at the alligator sleeping. Early the next morning, the man went out to get lumber and rope and nails and paint. When the people came out of their houses, they saw a red and yellow ship next door to the house of Mr. Plumbeam. "What have you done to your house?" they shouted at the man. "My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams," the man said, who had always loved ships. "He's just like Plumbeam," the people said. "He's got bees in his bonnet, bats in his belfry, and knots in his noodle." Then one by one they went to see Mr. Plumbeam late at night. They would sit under the palm trees and drink lemonade and talk about their dreams. And whenever anybody visited Mr. Plumbeam's house, the very next day, that person would set about changing his own house to fit his dreams. Look at all the houses and everybody's dreams. Have a balloon and like a Taj Mahal and a castle. This looks like a Greek temple. Whenever a stranger came to the street of Mr. Plumbeam and his neighbors, the stranger would say, "This is not a neat street." Then all the people would say, "Our street is us and we are it. Our street is where we like to be and it looks like all of our dreams." The end.
And now for a bonus reading, the book Peanut by Linus Alcinas. Read to you by Kensie Morris.
Peanut. Mildred was lonely. One day, she found a stray puppy. She decided to bring him home. Mildred tried to feed the puppy dog food, and she offered him a bone, but the puppy seemed to only like one thing. So Mildred named him Peanut. Peanut was quite useful around the apartment. He watered Mildred's plants. He was a great couch warmer, and he was terrific at squashing cereal boxes. On sunny days, Mildred took Peanut for walks in the park. He was different from the other dogs. Peanut didn't roll over. He never fetched, and he didn't bark exactly.
Honk.
Even so, Mildred loved Peanut dearly. One day, a man from the circus stopped Mildred in the park. "Madame," he cried, "you have found our missing elephant." He thanked her and took Peanut away. Mildred missed Peanut very much. She decided to go to the circus. Peanut was very happy to see her. But Mildred could see that he liked being home. After the circus left town, Mildred was lonely once again. Then, one day, she found a stray. Kitten! She decided to bring him home. The end.
Sorry, Craig was doing the windows in the background.